So I don't know what we're gonna call this thing, but John expressed a desire to me to have these weekly chats, just kind of going over the what's going on in wrestling. I know the last thing you need in your life is another wrestling podcast. I don't know if I'd call that this. I'd more call this therapy. For the former editor in chief of I almost said WrestleDelphia, the wrestling estate, John Corrigan. John, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to it. Hey, I said it's for you. It's for me a little bit too. I just love talking about wrestling. I actually just got up my recap of WrestleMania Night 1 over on the Wrestling Estate. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that, but yeah, it was a nice. I will say it was a nice trip going back down memory lane. I really think that night of wrestling held up to most single card WrestleMania events. I don't know how. So we'll start with this. Like, how would you with the 2-night WrestleMania now? How are we? What scale are we rating these on? Do we look at it as like the cumulative night 1 plus night 2 is WrestleMania 39 juxtaposed to WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania 19, or are we taking each night as its own WrestleMania, quote unquote?
I'm doing cumulative. I think that because it's all under one brand name,
Yeah,
WrestleMania. So I just think that's the way. Like I would never say like what was this year 39. I would never say WrestleMania 39 night 1 was better than WrestleMania 4. I would say combined. And it does seem to be the way going forward, right? At least like next year is 2 nights. Do we know if the year after is 2 nights as well?
I would assume so. It's been
Yeah.
2 nights ever since the pandemic.
Yeah.
And if you recall, after that happened, I kind of wrote a piece, and I was sort of campaigning for that in roundtables before the 2-night WrestleMania, and just seeing how it was working for New Japan. Because ideally, I wouldn't want a 2-night WrestleMania, but if the idea is you want to get everybody on the show, then I think it's best to kind of take it into 2 smaller sample sizes.
I agree. I'm a fan of it. I think that like I watched night 2 this year, and I thought that the pacing was good. I thought, instead of them long slogs where like, WrestleMania 34 and WrestleMania 35, where it would just be
Oh
like
yeah,
an 8 hour, it'd be like a work shift to watch WrestleMania. The broken up into 2 nights is much better. It gives matches time to breathe, gives fans time to breathe. So I definitely like the 2-night approach if they do continue that going forward.
I think they will. Although who's to say? I mean, with new ownership, anything's possible. So that's another good segue. So what do you think of the Endeavor sale? I know we've talked about it offline a little bit. I believe you expressed me that you think Endeavor's a good partner. What do you think of the whole thing?
So to be fair, though, I don't watch UFC, so I'm not really up to date with Endeavor. I don't know. I mean, I know that UFC seems to be doing well, so they obviously have good business sense. But the only things that I know for sure is that Vince is back in charge. That the big story of last year has really been rendered moot. And we know that probably because the company has really been acquired, that there'll probably be layoffs coming up. You would think. So I think that'll be not just for wrestlers. I think for WWE employees as well. So that'll probably be a big topic in the months to come.
Well, that's a tough thing. Anytime a business changes hands like that, you are going to get layoffs, and Endeavor is certainly going to want to bring their own people in. I kind of went through it with the UFC already when they made that purchase. They have the mentality of, keep the figurehead in place, keep the core, the engine, if you will, of what keeps the company afloat, keep that intact, and then all the ancillary stuff, the promotion, the marketing end of things, they're gonna want to do it their own way. How that differs from what WWE already does, kind of remains to be seen. But I will say that one thing they're definitely going to want to do is not double book WWE pay-per-views with UFC pay-per-views.
All right, that's a good point.
We will have that situation on Saturday. The UFC will be in Newark, New Jersey, while Backlash is going on from Puerto Rico. So I'm going to have to make a choice. I've already made my choice. I'm choosing UFC, but that's also because I am an editor with another MMA website. So I am kind of I honestly I'm spreading myself a little too thin.
Yeah,
but that's okay because I love the wrestling estate, and it's definitely felt good kind of getting back into the swing of things with that.
well, it looks good. If anyone hasn't checked out the site recently, it's got a slick design. A lot more stories, I think, are populated on there, so I think everybody should check it out.
Yeah, man, thank you for saying that. I took the last week or so to kind of put the theme together and just kind of take a deep dive into WordPress and see everything that it has to offer, and just kind of get used to it, just so in case I got to troubleshoot anything. Really boring stuff. I don't like the world of wrestling, but yeah, I personally I think Endeavor is a good partner for WWE. I do think that Ari Emanuel is he's I think he's the CEO of Endeavor. I forget what his title, the president. He's the figurehead. I do think he's a little bit in over his head with Vince. I really think that it would serve him well to actually know what's going on. And Vince did just get hit with another lawsuit. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I saw it.
Did you see the details?
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to some other people's thoughts on it. I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, a writer's room, is where all kinds of crazy shit is said. So I don't know if I don't know if there's a lot of credibility. I mean, think of all the people throughout history in the entertainment industry who could have filed a lawsuit based on pitches that were submitted in writers' rooms.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know if it was so much the pitches though, as it was, forcing talent to do things that they didn't want to do and were kind of just, bad form.
Right. I mean, but at the same point, the talent didn't have to do it, as many wrestlers have shown over the years. You make your decisions. So they did it, and they didn't file a lawsuit about it. So I don't know how.
To that, I'll say that the landscape has certainly changed a lot. The corporate structure of WWE doesn't necessarily make it so that the talent can just kind of do whatever they want. I mean, I know they can AEW, but as we've seen, that's not always a good thing.
Right. But, I mean, to be fair, it's not like they held a gun to any of these wrestlers' heads and said, go out and say this. If they don't want to say it, they can make a big thing about it. They can say no. I mean, they have options. We also don't really know the wrestler's feelings on this. Like, for instance, Apollo Crews, he might have been just grateful to be getting a push, to be getting TV time.
I do have an opinion on that. It seemed to me that he was enjoying that gimmick.
Right.
His body language seemed to suggest that he was getting a big push. It was the biggest push of his career by far, and I thought he was doing well with the character. And I didn't think it was offensive. And the voice didn't really seem manufactured as much as my limited knowledge on this sort of thing. Take the former UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, for example. He did a press conference after one of his wins, and this is just what I'm just saying. This is what happened. He's got his dad there with him, and he's answering questions from the press, and he's talking in his normal voice, and then he turns to talk to his dad, and he turns on the Nigerian dialect. I don't know. Look at me. I'm not Nigerian. I don't know how that goes. I'm not from another country. I'm from, the United States of America. But I don't know. Is it something that you can just turn on and off? I don't know. I don't know how Apollo Crews actually felt about that. To me, from an outsider's perspective, it seemed like he was enjoying the gimmick fine. And I didn't think it was I didn't think it was offensive. I actually thought it was very tasteful. with respect to his culture. I do push back a lot though against a lot of the jingoism in the Vince McMahon mindset of booking, and kind of the whole thing of, well, you're kind of seeing it right now at the LWO, where you're just putting people of like similar ethnicities together. Oh, there you go. I don't love that. And particularly with the LWO in WCW was a joke. The only wrestler to have ever picked up a victory in that group was Eddie Guerrero. And I think he did it one time while the group was a thing. To then bring it back and just say, oh, well, here's Rey Mysterio's backup. It's just a bunch of ethnically Hispanic wrestlers. It's a little short-sighted. But I get that they want to sell the merch. I don't know if you heard, but the LWO shirts are a big mover right now for WWE.
Makes sense. I mean, it looks, the New World Order shirts were big. I'm sure people would like a Latino World Order shirt.
Yeah, and one of the most interesting parts of the lawsuit actually didn't have to do with Apollo Crews or Bianca Belair. The suit did state that Bianca heavily pushed back against her creative. And that's also interesting to me because for as big of a star as they make her out to be, I think that she's been pretty listless in between WrestleManias. She'll have the big WrestleMania performance, right? But the build to that match is usually subpar. And then her creative, the rest of the year, is usually subpar, at least in my opinion. But that's another thing. What did strike me is wild was there was a love triangle storyline pitched, I think, with Mansoor, Aaliyah, and Angel Garza. And the whole thing was going to revolve around some sort of secret between Aaliyah and Mansoor. And they didn't say what Aaliyah's secret was going to be, but Mansoor's secret was reportedly going to be that he was responsible for 9/11. Number one, Mansoor is fucking Middle Eastern. He's not. He's Middle Eastern. He's I actually don't know where he's from, but he's not what. I don't think he is what Osama bin Laden was. Also, he was 6 years old when 9/11 happened. So, anyway, what else is new? You mentioned you were watching. You peeked in a little bit on AEW recently, haven't you?
No.
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 Okay.
Why? What made you think that?
Well, I don't know. We were talking about it a little bit offline the other day, and they did report some solid early ticket sales for Wembley Stadium.
I saw that. Yeah, 36,000, right?
That's right. Tony's very happy about that. I didn't see what they're going for, but obviously that's super encouraging for them. Obviously, there's a big English thirst for wrestling. I don't think that these companies tap into that market quite enough. WWE's dabbled with it with the NXT UK brand, but obviously with that being repurposed, I would not be opposed to a WrestleMania at Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, no, I think that would be huge.
I would not, and I definitely need to bring like a SummerSlam back there, or even a Royal Rumble. I think that could be a lot of fun. They're great fans, and I think there's a lot more that can be done with that. TNA was actually really good at tapping into the UK stuff. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. No, they were. I think that I guess they said historically that if business is down in the US, WWE will go overseas, and that's what it was at least during the 90s. But right now business is on fire in the US, so I guess maybe they're going to hedge their bets. Or with AEW success, I'm sure Vince is thinking, can we build a bit bigger arena than Wembley and go over there and beat them now? Because it is competition, and especially to Vince, When he sees one wrestling company doing something big like that, that gets him more excited than anything, from a business perspective.
It does. It's still unclear to me exactly how Vince is going to be involved going forward. It seems to me he's obviously not at every Raw. Clearly, the show is better when he's not there than when he is there. A couple weeks ago, he actually mandated some script rewrites remotely. So while he wasn't there, he also kind of was like a ghost. But it remains to be seen. Like, is he going to be in? Like, look at it this way: in UFC matchmaking, they have a different matchmaker assigned to a group of weight classes. But when it comes to the main event title picture, Dana White is still heavily involved. So is Vince going to be like involved in the big picture stuff? Is he going to be not as involved in the minute details? Because if so, I think I can live with that. Not ideal, obviously, but
I mean, it's Vince McMahon, it's WWE. If he's there, he's running the show. I have no doubt that he's in charge. I have no doubt that if any major decision needs to be made, it goes through him. I would say that everything's just going to be the way it was before. He's there. I mean, that seems to be a major reason why he wanted this sale, is that, he would be kept in power, or at least put back in power. Who knows to say really if he was ever out of power? He was only gone for a little bit, and the show looked different and everything, but he's still Vince McMahon, and the guy supposedly in charge is his son-in-law, so who knows?
have you seen Arrested Development?
A little bit, not much. I might not get references.
Okay. Well, I mean, one of the bigger picture storylines in the early seasons was the who has control of the Bluth company. So I just think there's a lot of parallels between like a George Bluth and like a Vince McMahon, like trying to get back into power and trying to maneuver with like all these different corporate loopholes and things like that.
Do you watch Succession?
So no, I did see an episode by accident though.
Okay. Well, you got to watch. First of all, I know you're editing many sites and you got jobs and a love life, but Succession needs to be on your itinerary at some point. Great show.
How deep into the show is it?
It's season 3 or 4 right now. Might be 4.
It's been going on a while. I only heard about it this season.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And again, it was by accident. Like, we were in our hotel in Puerto Vallarta a few weeks ago, and it just came on. I think the first episode of the new season just came on the TV, and I was like, "What's this?" And I was like working on something while that was going on, but it looked interesting.
It's definitely a show though that you have to watch from the beginning. It's probably impossible to like hop in at a later date.
Yeah. When my queue gets freed up a little bit on the TV show front, that one's going to the front for sure.
Let's talk about Dark Side of the Ring. Speaking of TV shows,
yeah, you ready for that to come back?
I'm excited. I did not watch the Territories series. It didn't look anything that I would be interested in, but I love the Dark Side series, and this season might be the best one because every season before there's been like some topics and wrestlers that we already know the story, but this one it's like all like mid-card guys or older guys that like I'm fascinated by the Graham family tragedy. All 3 generations committing suicide. That is a great story that needs to be a deep dive into. You got Junkyard Dog, Adrian Adonis. Like this, I think this one could be the best one.
It's funny. I was actually just watching it. Well, not watching. I was listening to a Dark Side of the Ring episode at work today. Because I was listening. There's a account on YouTube that's been posting classic shoot interviews, and the one with Eddie Mansfield came up, and that was super interesting. He had a lot to say. It's one of those where the guy's got a lot to say despite having not done that much, in wrestling. No offense, but I remember that I was like, where do I know this guy from? And I was like, oh yeah, this is the guy that said in the David Schultz episode that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, but he forgot to free the pro wrestlers. An all-time quote.
That is great.
All-time quote. Why didn't you watch the Back to the Territories?
I don't like, because I don't. It was like from what I could tell, it was like outside the ring stories, like ribs and things like that. I'm not that interested in
Really?
Huh?
Really?
I mean, like, I feel like I know a lot of them from just being a wrestling fan this long. Yeah, it just didn't appeal to me. But the dark side, like, that's the good stuff. That stuff that non-wrestling fans can get into. And I learned a lot in them. Like the was it Herb Abrams? Like, that episode was great.
Yeah.
Mick Foley's line when they asked him what would Herb be doing today, he said time. Like, that was an all-time. I love that style. I was not a fan of the plane ride from hell one, obviously, because I'm a huge Flair fan. But like, it's still like, I think the wrestling world still needs episodes like that makes you question some of these seemingly infallible figures like Flair.
Absolutely. I've always thought they've done a great job with that, and a great job making it accessible to non-wrestling fans too. Like, it was something that me and my girlfriend got into quite a bit during the pandemic. We were apart for a lot of that time because I chose to go back to Pennsylvania. But, we would kind of get on Zoom and watch these episodes one by one. And, there were quite a few that she found interesting. She was fascinated by the Bruiser Brody, Jose Gonzalez situation. The Von Erich family one was really wild to her. And, we're going to get to explore that a little bit more with that movie coming out here in the next year or two. But yeah, I'm super excited for it to come back. I think they could get at least 3 or 4 more seasons out of it, if I'm being honest.
Well, I don't know if you saw today that Vice is preparing to file for bankruptcy, so they might not be getting more seasons out of it.
Well, maybe they'll get bought out or something.
Yeah.
I know that's not really what Vice has been about. They're different media properties over the years, but
you really think we can get 3 or 4 more out of this? You think there's more stories to be told?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't actually looked too far into the lineup for this season.
Because I think, like, after this one, I think they're pretty much out of compelling stories that they could tell with voices they haven't shown before, and with, like, getting people to talk about it. Like, for instance, you can't really go that much farther back. Like, wrestlers of the 70s, that's already 50 years ago. Like, these people are in their 70s or 80s now, if they could talk about it. So I don't know. I think that, like, and I wish they would stop doing these ones. Like, the first season, I guess it was the Montreal Screwjob. This season they're doing Bash at the Beach 2000. Like, that it kind of, like, cheapens the show.
Situation.
Yeah, right. Like, it's like nobody really cares. Like, how are you going to show us a story about the Graham family all taking their own life, and then Hulk Hogan didn't want to lose to Jeff Jarrett or something? But I don't even know the details of the Bash at the Beach bullshit, and I don't care. Nobody cares.
I don't really know either, dude.
Yeah,
I know bits and pieces, but then I conflate that with other dumb WCW stories that I've just heard over the years.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you a play-by-play of what that even was. All I remember is that Jeff Jarrett was involved, and Hulk Hogan wouldn't do a job, and they ended up doing a dumb finish or something like that.
It's stupid, but I don't know. Other than that, I mean, if you look at it, 1 or 9 out of 10, that's a great, that's a good series. So I'm looking forward to it. And it's coming up, May 30th, I think, or 31st, end of May.
Yeah, it's coming soon.
Yeah.
I am excited for that. It's gonna give us a lot of good content to talk about on the site. Believe me. I don't know if I'm gonna do like a play-by-play review, because there's gonna be a lot of that, and I'm sure Conrad is gonna be doing his post-show podcast. But I think we could build up to it with like a top 10 episodes from the first 3 seasons or something like that.
That's a good idea. Absolutely.
Yeah. So John, why did you fall out of it with wrestling in the first place?
I'm bored. The pay-per-views are too long. WWE, I'm obviously not the only person to fall out of love with that. But then when I was excited about AEW, I got tired of there's like no storylines. I don't know all these foreign people they bring in. I don't know the indie people from America that they bring in. I just don't. There's no compelling stories. The only compelling story in wrestling is the Bloodline. I don't know if you would even consider that still compelling. Um, and then everything else outside the ring, like CM Punk's saga, that is compelling. That I care about. If they can somehow put that on television, I'll watch. I'll be there. You know what? You know what I watched when Mark Briscoe wrestled on AEW, the tribute match or whatever. I mean, that was something that I could cared about, that I could get invested in, and I enjoyed the match. Thought it was great. I thought they did a great tribute. But they need more things like that. More, I don't know. I don't. Other than that, there aren't many characters in all of wrestling that I care about anymore. They really, it's just. I seem to have. I don't want to say grown out of it because I didn't really change much. The wrestling has changed.
AEW is lacking something fierce in the character and storytelling department.
Yeah.
I know everyone rags on WWE for hiring Hollywood writers, but at the same time, I think there is some value in that because those people write stuff that's gonna hook people when they're watching something on a screen. And what do you do with wrestling? It's the things that people remember aren't the matches. I mean, maybe for some, but that's the problem with AEW. I think they book for such a niche audience that favors the moves or whatever. But for me, it's like I see something one time and it's like, okay, I've seen it. It's a thing, and now it's just a means to an end for what's going to come next in the story. But when there is no story, then it's all kind of pointless.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels that way right now. It's felt that way for a long time. And I can get compelling stories elsewhere. So
Like where? What's another compelling story outside of wrestling that's really gripped you besides Succession?
I would say The Blacklist. You watch that?
No.
Um, I'm thinking of that with it's on the Yellow Jackets on Showtime. You ever see that?
No.
You watch any television?
Yeah, I do. I do. I haven't watched a lot of movies lately, though. I've actually got my girlfriend into the Rocky movies.
Oh,
So
see,
we're
there
going.
you go. That's good stuff.
I think it's really the standard for combat sports storytelling. Just watch a Rocky movie and take some notes, and you will come away from that completely refreshed. I mean, my girlfriend, she avoided that series her entire life because she thought, oh, too macho, the bravado is too much, and I don't really like boxing. Well, from her perspective, but she was gripped and moved, and we're only through the first four movies. The bad one's coming up next. And I haven't seen Rocky Balboa in a number of years, so I'm looking forward to getting to that one. But man, Rocky 2, it like moved me to tears.
Well, let me say this though. Your girlfriend's not from Philadelphia, though, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I think growing up in Philly, you get a whole different appreciation for it. It's a whole different experience. Like, would I don't know, like would we have watched Rocky like when we were kids and stuff if we weren't from Philly? Because even when we were growing up, like the movies weren't coming. The movie came out in 2006, Rocky Balboa. So we were like, still in our teens, I guess. But I think that connection is really what made it a classic.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, then again, it's not like I watched Trading Places when I was a kid. That takes place in Philly.
Right.
You ever see
No, no.
that? So that's one thing that I think I've really been doing a lot of the last 6 months or so. I've been watching like specifically a lot of comedies. Trading Places is
Hey,
one of
this
the
is
fun.
Eddie Murphy, right?
Eddie
Yeah,
Murphy and Aykroyd.
yeah.
one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. I don't think you can make it now, but
Yeah,
that's
well,
a
yeah. That's another
that's
thing. A lot of like I have watched because of Mick Foley's podcast. I went back and watched when he turned heel in early '98, right after WrestleMania 14, and this it's kind of a short run too because he was pretty much face again after falling off the cell just 2 months later. But the week to
when
week.
when he got with Paul Bearer, right?
No. 98 after WrestleMania when he becomes Dude Love and
Okay,
becomes Vince's corporate pick.
right, that's right. It was his Daniel Bryan joining the Wyatt family.
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. But like that has been fun and because Mick talked about it, I was like, you know what, let me go back and watch this. And I never watched it week to week like that. So I've been doing that. And what you do notice, because a lot of times you hear people say the Attitude Era is overrated. It was very top heavy, like, just the main event guys. And when you watch it week to week, boy, that is so true. I mean, other than like I was thinking about doing a story like this. I don't know if I will yet, but when you talk about who's the greatest, and when you talk about Mount Rushmores and people compare Hogan and Austin and Cena and all this, if you look at what Austin was truly carrying, when Hogan was on top, you still had Piper, Savage, Warrior, Andre. You had main event
Yeah,
guys.
Jake the Snake.
When Cena was on top, I mean, you could argue maybe not, but you still had Batista, you had Orton, you had some of the older guys still there, H. Michaels, whatever.
Undertaker.
Austin had nobody really. You had Undertaker. You had Kane was like he was new though, like he wasn't really a proven act. You had Foley, who was not a proven act, and he, like working with Austin, like boosted him up to the main event. You had Rock on the rise. You had Triple H on the rise, but you had no other real top guy there, and like Austin carried that.
I think I know what you're thinking of. And if you take that snapshot, like pretty much the day after WrestleMania 14, I think it was. You're right. You're absolutely right. Shawn Michaels, non-factor at that point, right? So then after Austin, you got Triple H, you got The Rock coming up, but I'm not sure exactly where he was. I think he was calling himself The Rock at that point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Um,
He wasn't a main event. Or Triple H.
And Kane, he was still very much unknown quantity at the time.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know if that how much staying power that character was really going to have.
Right.
No one could have predicted the staying power that character had. And it was really a blessing in disguise. It had as much staying power as pretty much any character in wrestling other than The Undertaker.
Yeah. So I do think that Austin doesn't get enough credit, to be honest with you. Like what this guy did with a brand, and it's not even just a brand. They were competing against Nitro. He's the one that helped them turn the tide. I mean, that 83-week stretch snapped because he was going to finally fight. Not even finally. I shouldn't say finally. He was going to fight Vince McMahon. That's the episode that snapped the streak. And what something else that Mick Foley said in there, and I know Mick doesn't act like when he does these podcasts, he's not like actually researching or watching things back earlier in the week. He's just going off his memory. But he said that was his favorite episode of Raw ever. And it struck me because when I did a list a few years back of the greatest episodes of Raw, I know that was on there, but I was like, there's no way it's number one because that's the only good thing about that episode. The rest of the show is really trash. It's a terrible mid-card. It's the DOA. It's against the Nation. It's against the DX doing like arguing with the Road Warriors.
They're running that horrible NWA storyline at the time too.
That was going on as well. And that gets like a decent amount of TV time, at least in this time period. Dan Severn there, the new Midnight Express, Jeff
Yeah.
Jarrett. So and plus Sable versus Mark Mero. That
They brought Honky Tonk Man back too.
he wasn't there for these Raws at least.
Oh, okay.
But
That might have been.
it's just like Goldust is doing Goldust is pretty much directionless. He's just doing bizarre shit week to week.
He's doing artist formerly known as, right?
He might be at this point. Yeah, he might be. But
Dressed up as a baby, I think.
Yeah, that whole episode is nothing besides the Austin Vince narrative, and even that, like, it was. I guess like they deserve. We give them credit now because so many shows, like we said, AEW, they don't really do a show long narrative. I don't know if they've ever done a show long narrative, and today it seems like the Bloodline, they do show long narratives. So we kind of compare that to everything else, but it really was like the opening where Austin, challenges McMahon. They do some things where like people try to talk Vince out of it, whatever, throughout the show. But the final segment, man, that was the money. You see Vince becoming the Vince that we know. And then when they do the bait and switch with Dude Love coming out, it was great storytelling because he kind of like foreshadowed it the week before where he said, you won't see Mankind, you won't see Cactus Jack for a long time, blah, blah, blah. So that whole thing was great, but definitely not the greatest episode of Raw ever. Definitely not. But much better than today's wrestling.
What would you say, or give me maybe a couple that off the top of your head could constitute the greatest episode of Raw ever? Because that'd be a very tough list to do. You're trimming through so much fat,
Yeah. Also, the one in '97 where Austin and Brett are I think they have like a street fight, but that's another show long narrative that carries throughout. They send Brett into an ambulance. And then Austin's like in the ambulance, he beats the shit out of him. That was probably one of the best. I remember that might be number one on the list. I forget what I had on there. I think you also have to count, and it's a different because I think it was only 1 hour at this time. But even the first year of Raw, where they had 1, 2, 3 Kid upset Razor, I think that show also had something else or just had good matches throughout. And then I would also you got to put some like more Attitude Era, but later. So like 2000. Or 2001, I think I would put up there. Nothing recently. I don't even know if I had anything in the 2010s on that list. But yeah, I would put a lot of that on there.
Maybe some of those early Nexus episodes.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. That was what, 2010?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have Cena, I guess. I mean, the early, but even that, it's like, so you're taking Nexus, but that's like one segment of the show, and like, does that stretch the whole show? Like, is that enough?
It did, because they would have the opening segment, and then Wade Barrett would tease something for the end of the show, and then all around the show, they're coming out and they're attacking random wrestlers, and then you got Sheamus as the WWE champion, kind of running around, not affiliated with them, but they're like not targeting him. So it really kept, those episodes did keep you on your toes for the full 3. I think they were 3 hours at that point.
Well, they were 3 hours in 2012 when it started.
2012? Okay, so I mean that obviously benefited from the 2 hour window.
Yeah.
But even when Raw was a 1 hour show, those early episodes had some great freaking matches.
Yeah.
I know we just, downplayed match quality versus, storylines, but it did. It had the Ric Flair Mr. Perfect, where Perfect beats him, and I think it was Loser Leaves Town.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. And then Bret Hart versus Hakushi in '95 was also a great match.
So
Just
was Bret against 1, 2, 3 Kid in '94.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be up there, one of the top 10 best. And that itself was like a story in the match. That's another thing, like, like we're saying, it's all match heavy, but you can still tell stories in the matches, and they don't really do that anymore either. It's AEW is the biggest offender of this. That just like, I don't know, their matches, at least from what I can remember, I'm sure nothing has changed, but I don't know, high spot, no selling, no moves that like fit your character. You know what I mean? Like like people shit on like Kamala for like match quality, but he wrestled like he should, like he fit his character. Somebody who does wrestle like their character that still gets shit on, Wyatt, Bray. Like I don't know, I know it's like a bizarre character that doesn't get hurt ever, but he at least wrestles like you would expect the character to wrestle.
He's offensively for sure. I think the Sister Abigail is an awesome finish. Whether it's for the original version of that character or the Fiend, I like it both ways. You're right, though. You are right. I still think Bray Wyatt's a terrible wrestler. Don't get me wrong. I think he's much better. That character's much better suited for movies, and I think it got exposed when Eli Drake, L.A. Knight just completely overshadowed him in that feud. But we'll talk about that another day. Sticking with the AEW thing, I know it's fashionable to kind of crap on AEW for the lack of storytelling, the lack of storylines, and all the other narratives you've heard come out of there. Like, I don't know if you heard the litany of veterans that have been in the locker room saying their advice isn't being heard, and then you'll hear things from like one or two guys that'll just contradict that. I don't know. It's a frustrating thing. I think that a lot of these wrestlers have begun to really lose sight of what wrestling's all about. And not to get all Eddie Mansfield on you here and say it's all about did he draw money? Like, did he draw money? No, no. I don't like using the term drawing money. Like, what does that even mean? Right? Like you're one of like 20 wrestlers on a show. You drew the money. I mean, I know you're the last match, but I don't think Eddie Mansfield was ever the last match, to be fair.
Well, I've got to disagree with you there. I mean, drawing money, Roman Reigns is drawing money. He's been the champion. The shows have been focused on him.
Yeah, but absolutely.
Well, that's drawing money. That's the definition.
Product's hot, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But as far as being able to draw a straight line from who's your champion to how the ratings are, I don't think you can do that. I think there's too many variables.
So you wouldn't? I mean, you wouldn't draw a straight line from the Bloodline storyline, the WWE's, the fan interest going back up.
Quite. I mean, yes and no. Yes, in that it is this grand scope storyline that's just been awesome, and Roman Reigns has obviously been at the center of that, and he's been phenomenal. And I will pick him as wrestler of the year.
I won't just credit Roman though. Like, I shouldn't do that. I want to say like Heyman, the Usos, everybody involved in that storyline.
I think it's just been more the booking approach. One thing that I really put over in my WrestleMania Night 1 review was just the quality and quantity of storylines that had been fleshed out. Now, not everything was perfect. The booking of the women's division, WWE in particular, I don't want to say it's taken a hit since Triple H came into power as the chief content officer. I think that's his title. But it hasn't really improved all that much. That being said, you've got Roman in the Bloodline storyline, which you throw Cody Rhodes into the mix, and you get a totally different feeling from the Sami Zayn stuff, which I think is great and necessary to the long-term health of it all. But then you got the Mysterio storyline, which has been great. I thought Logan Paul and Seth Rollins did a really great job at building their match with limited time.
I wouldn't say that they drew money, though. Like, I don't think anybody ordered WrestleMania just to see Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul. I only watched Night 2 to see Roman and Cody.
I think the Vision drew the money, though, is my point.
The who?
The Vision. The overall, looking at the whole big picture of how booking is being handled in the company, or may or may not be right now. Who's to say?
Well, I don't know. I don't agree with that because what other than the Bloodline, the Mysterio storyline's good, but they're not on top. I think that Roman and them, like, they've been carrying these shows, I think that's, my other example is when Matt Hardy was doing the Broken character, and he wrestled in House of Hardcore 3 shows in a row. He was the main event, him against Dreamer, and then I guess Jeff was there, and other things were there. I paid money to see all 3 shows, and I didn't do that for any other time because I love the Broken Matt character. That and they also, I think, all 3 shows sold out. That was like a pure definition of drawing money. And I see what you're saying though. Like on a show like WWE, it's tougher to just put that all on one person. But I think with Roman, you can. I think absolutely you can say this guy's drawing money.
And to be clear, I don't want to say that like drawing money isn't a thing. I do think it is a thing. It definitely was a thing back in the day. I'm just saying that it usually the term drawing money comes from people that never actually drew any money, like an Eddie Mansfield and like a Mike Graham. That was something he always used to. That was his like unofficial catchphrase. He never drew a dime. Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit never drew a dime. Well, neither did Mike Graham. So
yeah, well, yeah. Well, people have been saying drawing money though since wrestling's been around.
Yeah, I just mean that the people that really hammer that expression home.
And
I don't think it definitely doesn't mean what it used to mean.
So, well, what would you say it means now?
I mean, a lot of it's, not totally within the control of the talent. Back in the day, they'd get some directions, and the top guys are going to be the top guys. And if people were coming to the shows, also much, how do I put this eloquently? Good business for like a Mid-South would be what? 500 people to that 500,000 people, right? In WWE, I mean, you're drawing the number of people you're drawing isn't really the thing. The metric is more your engagement, right? It's just a different scope and a different time, and the business just works in a completely different way. I just don't think it means what it used to.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I definitely think we can say Roman's a draw, the Bloodline's a draw. I think
stars matter. If you're saying stars matter, they absolutely matter.
Right.
And you got to make them.
Right.
I think AEW has made stars on their in their way, but I don't think anybody's got any remote mainstream appeal. Or a CM Punk.
Who did they make over there? Who's a star?
Well, I mean, on paper, they made Adam Page, right?
I don't know. Is he a star? I don't know.
They had a plan for him.
No, you're right. On paper, I agree.
No, I think with him, I think there's something missing just with him specifically.
Yeah.
He's one of my good friends. Page is one of his favorite wrestlers, but I was ragging on him a little bit because I don't know, man. A lot of people forget in the whole CM Punk brouhaha that Adam Page kind of started it, but people are willing to overlook that fact because they like him so much. But for a guy who's as well liked by the audience as he is, I don't know, man. Like, why isn't he on top right now?
I'm gonna tell you, the only 2 people AEW has made into stars are MJF and Britt Baker. That's it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah, and I would say
both heels, by the way.
Both heels. Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, who do they have any homegrown faces?
Well, Britt has since turned face. But
she was over as a heel,
right?
She didn't get over as a face. Like, she wasn't as good as as a face. Like, when she turned heels, when it all clicked.
I just don't think AEW is pushing the most talented people right now. Like, I think that there's a gold mine waiting to be unearthed in Ricky Starks.
I agree.
And they just won't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll try and do it. Like he'll cut a promo and Tony will go, "Oh, that was really good. Let's get him more TV time," and then it'll just stop. And then they'll put him in a feud with Chris Jericho, and they'll trade wins. And Starks will usually, I mean, the baby face will usually get the first one, and then Jericho gets the next two or whatever, and then it peters out, and they do something else with it.
I'm going to read you. I'm looking at their roster right now. I'm going to tell you who should be stars.
Okay. This is actually something I did want to ask. I wanted to see like who were like the not top prospects if you will, but the guys that you really got an eye on or had an eye on before you kind of got out of wrestling.
Ricky Starks for sure.
Yeah.
Powerhouse Hobbs.
Yeah.
The Acclaimed.
Yeah.
Let's see.
They made the Acclaimed to some extent.
To some extent, right? But they didn't. They get right. They're not the champions anymore, right? Like they should have had a long reign. They should be doing their thing. They were. I don't even like the Scissor Me Daddy shit, but I think that I love the reps. You know, I think he's funny, and I think Bowens is like like a badass powerhouse, and I think that they made a great team. And they feel like to me, especially with the Scissor Me Daddy stuff, they do like even if I don't like it, I recognize that it's original, that it's fresh. They feel like a fresh act when a lot of wrestling doesn't feel like that fresh anymore. But like I can't. The closest comparison I would give to them would be the New Age Outlaws, but they seem to be much better wrestlers. That's
the one that everybody would point to, and it seems authentic too. At the end of the day,
yeah. I want to say Brian Pillman Jr., but I don't know.
They haven't done anything with him in a long time.
They haven't done anything with him ever. And they should have after the Dark Side episode.
I just have to question why not.
I know, right? So so like something that we don't know, like behind the scenes, you mean? Like
yeah, because he's not terrible from what I can see.
Yeah.
If he was, then that'd be another thing. But I don't think he'd be under contract in that case.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got nothing. And he's definitely frustrated by this. He gave an interview with Cafe de Rene like a few months ago. And he just seemed, every time they brought up an AEW question, it seemed like he was holding something back.
Here's one that might scratch some heads, but I think the look alone should be enough. The Butcher. I mean, he looks unlike anybody else in wrestling. He's a throwback. What you gonna say?
How old?
Oh, I don't know.
Let's see.
They don't. What is age? Doesn't even matter though.
Every time I die, which is he's 45.
So what though? Jericho's in his 50s.
He'd be like, I think he'd be a great one-off opponent for one of these giants, like a Wardlow or something like that.
I think they should give him a run, give him one of their many belts, and let him just cook on people. And even if he's not that good in the ring, which I don't remember if he is or not, I just remember him standing out. And they don't have anybody that stands. Everybody looks the same.
Well, he's in a tag team.
I don't like the partner. I see nothing there. You could put anybody else in that position.
That guy was in TNA, if I'm not mistaken, right? They did the storyline with Chelsea Green, where she was Laurel Van Ness, I think. He like got married to her, but then something happened. I think Maria Kanellis was involved too.
We should just do this next episode because I need more time to go through this.
All right, we'll do that next episode. But just give me a couple more for now.
Want a couple more for now? Well, I'll just tell you this: Darby should be bigger than he is.
Right, you told me that.
Yeah,
I agree. I do. I have to agree. Like, on one hand, like, yeah, the dude is really small, and a lot of people brush off size in wrestling like it's nothing. It's not nothing because at the end of the day, it's an industry built on cosmetics, and people, gravitate towards these larger than life characters. But he has a way of being larger than life in spite of that. He's not like he's just a guy that can wrestle good. Like he does connect with people. clearly. And that's in spite of the fact that he's not a good promo at all. And, you know, I don't want to, the low hanging fruit again, you know, we talked about New Age Outlaws and the Acclaimed, Darby Allin, Jeff Hardy, but there are a lot of parallels. Jeff was never good on the mic, but he did paint his face, but he connected with people in this cosmic sort of way, for lack of a better term. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I like when he does the weird videos and I mean it's just different. It's original. He should just be doing it. He doesn't need to be a good guy on the mic. Just do the videos and talk in that, or get your messaging across some other way.
Yeah.
You know, all these people that I mentioned are different. They stand out. They have some life to them, some character to them, some unique ability, some charisma, and that's who they should be pushing. But we'll definitely go through the full list next episode, next week. I guess.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say on that is just that everything I've heard about, one of the greatest booking runs, I think, is Paul Heyman ECW, right? One of the things that everyone always says about him is that Paul was a master of propping up someone's strengths and hiding their weaknesses. And everybody that you just mentioned has clear strengths that can and should be taken advantage of. And for whatever reason, they're just not right now. But I am going to let you go, John. I am through with you for today. We will pick that up next week, though. That sounds like it could be an intriguing exercise. We should go through, for the heck of it, we should go through the current NXT roster as well, especially with all the call-ups. I think there's going to be a lot of people like I'd like to get your first impression of. So
sure, we should go through all the MLW, NWA, everybody. We should say who are the talents out there that aren't getting the rub.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk about MLW. I know Jacob Fatu is one of your favorite wrestlers. I'm sure that still would be the case if you saw any of his recent stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. All right, John, I'm gonna let you go. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll be back with more of this next week, whatever it is.
All right, I'll see you.